The warning lights on Jae-ho Kim's cargo ship blinked red again. He slammed his fist on the control panel and cursed under his breath. The Wanderer had been his home for 3 years now, hauling supplies between distant planets. But today, the old ship was acting up worse than usual. "Captain, we need to dock soon," called Soo-jin from the engine room. Her voice echoed through the metal corridors. "The plasma drive is making strange noises again. If we don't fix it now, we might be stuck floating in space." Jae-ho looked at the star map on his screen. The nearest station was Epsilon Station, a trading post on the edge of civilized space. It wasn't the cleanest place in the galaxy, but their repair shops were cheap and they didn't ask too many questions about cargo. "Fine," he said into the comm system. "Set course for Epsilon Station. Tell Boram to request a docking bay." Boram, his navigator, was already working on it. She was good at her job, even if she complained about everything. Within an hour, they were docking at the grimy space station. Epsilon Station looked like someone had built it from spare parts and hope. Pipes ran along the outside walls like metal veins, and the docking bays smelled like oil and recycled air. After Soo-jin disappeared into the bowels of the ship with her tools, Jae-ho found himself with nothing to do. The repairs would take at least 4 hours. He could sit in his small cabin and stare at the walls, or he could explore the station. Epsilon Station had 3 main levels. The top level had the expensive shops and restaurants where rich traders spent their money. The middle level had the practical stuff like repair shops and supply stores. The bottom level had everything else, including the exotic creature market. Jae-ho had heard about the creature market but never visited it. Today, with time to kill and curiosity getting the better of him, he decided to take a look. He told Boram where he was going and took the elevator down to the bottom level. The market was exactly what he expected. Cages lined the walls filled with strange animals from 100 different worlds. Some creatures glowed with soft light. Others had too many eyes or not enough legs. The air smelled like hay, cleaning chemicals, and something else he couldn't name. Traders called out to him as he walked past their stalls. They promised him the rarest pets in the galaxy, creatures that would make him rich or famous or both. Jae-ho just smiled and kept walking. He wasn't here to buy anything. He was just looking. That's when he saw Tae-min. The alien trader was standing next to a small cage in the back corner of the market. He had the desperate look of someone who needed to make a sale quickly. His blue skin was sweating, and his 4 arms gestured wildly as he talked to anyone who would listen. "Rare Valdorian ice dragon," Tae-min was saying to a group of uninterested customers. "Very special creature. Very valuable. Only 50 credits," the customers laughed and walked away. 50 credits was nothing in the exotic pet trade. Most rare creatures sold for thousands of credits, sometimes tens of thousands. Either this trader was crazy or the creature was worthless. Jae-ho moved closer to get a better look. The cage was small, maybe 2 feet on each side. Inside was something that might have been a dragon, if dragons could look this pathetic. It was white, about the size of a house cat, and covered in what looked like barnacles. The barnacles were dark gray and seemed to pulse with their own rhythm. They covered most of the creature's body, making it look more like a diseased rock than a living animal. The dragon's eyes were closed, and it barely seemed to be breathing. One wing was tucked under its body while the other hung at an odd angle. It looked like it was dying or wished it was. "What's wrong with it?" Jae-ho asked. Tae-min's eyes lit up when he saw a potential customer. Nothing wrong. Just sleeping, very tired from long journey. These barnacle things, they are natural, part of Dragon's defense system." Jae-ho looked at the creature more closely. The barnacles didn't look natural at all. They looked like they were stuck to the dragon's skin, holding it down. But what did he know about alien creatures? 50 credits? He asked. "Very fair price," Tae-min said quickly. "Valdorian ice dragons very rare. Maybe extinct. This might be last one in galaxy." Another trader nearby laughed loudly. "Last one because they all died," he called out. "That thing been here for weeks. Nobody wants dying pet." Taemin's face turned a darker shade of blue. "Ignorant fool," he muttered. "Dragon just needs good home. Proper care. Will be magnificent creature." Jae-ho stared at the small white dragon. It opened one eye and looked back at him. For just a moment he thought he saw something in that eye. Not just pain or sickness, but intelligence. Maybe even hope. "Will it live long enough to get it back to my ship?" Jae-ho asked. "Oh yes. Very strong creature. Just looks weak because of barnacles. Once barnacles fall off naturally, Dragon will be healthy again. The trader next to them shook his head. Don't waste your money, human. Thing's been dying for weeks. Barnacles are killing it slowly. But Jeho was already pulling out his credit chip. He couldn't explain why, but something about the small dragon made him want to help it. Maybe it was the way it looked at him, or maybe he just felt sorry for any creature stuck in such a small cage. 50 credits, he said. Taemin's hands moved so fast they were almost a blur as he processed the payment. Excellent choice, excellent choice. You will not regret this purchase. Dragon will bring you much happiness. The other traders were laughing now. Human bought the dead dragon, one of them said. 50 credits for a fancy paperweight. Give it a week, said another. Thing won't last 3 days. Jeho ignored them. He picked up the cage, surprised by how light it was. The dragon inside didn't move, but he thought he felt it shift slightly when he lifted the cage. Any special care instructions? He asked Taemin. Just give it food and water. Maybe some warmth. Valdorian ice dragons like cold, but not too cold. Room temperature is good. Jeho nodded and headed back toward the elevator. Behind him, he could hear the traders still laughing and making jokes about the stupid human who bought a dying dragon as a pet. Back on the Wanderer, Sujin and Bo-Ram were waiting for him in the cargo bay. They took one look at the cage in his hands and stared at him like he had grown a second head. Captain, Bo-Ram said slowly, please tell me you didn't just buy that thing. It was only 50 credits, Jeho said. 50 credits we don't have to waste, Sujin said. She knelt down next to the cage and peered inside. What is it supposed to be? A Valdorian ice dragon. Both women looked at him, then at each other, then back at him. Captain, Sujin said in the patient voice she used when she thought he was being stupid. That's not a dragon. That's a dying lizard covered in space barnacles. The trader said the barnacles would fall off naturally. The trader lied to you, Bo-Ram said. Look at that thing. It's barely breathing. Jeho looked down at the small white creature in the cage. His crew was probably right. He had probably just wasted 50 credits on a creature that would be dead by morning. But when the dragon opened its eyes and looked at him again, he felt that same strange pull he had felt in the market. I'm going to set up a habitat in my quarters, he said. See if I can help it get better. Sujin and Bo-Ram exchanged another look. Your choice, Captain, Sujin said. But don't get attached to it. That thing looks like it's already got 1 foot in the grave. As Jeho carried the cage toward his quarters, he wondered if his crew was right. Maybe he had just made a very expensive mistake. But something told him that this small, pathetic creature was more than it appeared to be. He just had no idea how right he was. Jeho spent the next hour setting up a small habitat in his quarters. He cleared out a corner near his bed and placed the cage there. The dragon hadn't moved since he bought it, and he was starting to worry that his crew might be right about it being close to death. He found an old heating pad in the supply closet and placed it under half of the cage. The trader had said room temperature was good, but the creature looked so cold and still. Maybe a little warmth would help. The dragon opened one eye when he turned on the heating pad. It was such a small movement that Jeho almost missed it, but there it was, a sign of life. Hey there, he said softly, kneeling down next to the cage. I know you probably can't understand me, but I'm going to try to help you feel better. The dragon's eye closed again, but Jeho thought he saw its breathing become a little steadier. He had named the creature during the walk back to his ship. Hyeon, which meant white in Korean. It seemed like a good name for such a pale creature. The next morning, Jeho woke up to find Hyeon in the same position. But somehow the dragon looked a tiny bit better. Its breathing was definitely stronger, and one of the smaller barnacles on its side seemed looser than before. Sujin stopped by his quarters after breakfast to check on the repairs. She glanced at the cage and shook her head. Still alive, I see, she said. Surprised it made it through the night. It looks a little better today, Jeho said. Sujin knelt down and studied the dragon more carefully. You know, Captain, those barnacles look really weird. I've seen space parasites before, and these don't look like any natural creature I know. What do you mean? Look at the way they're attached. See those little metal threads? And the way they pulse is too regular. Almost like they're machines. Jeho looked closer. She was right. The barnacles did have thin metallic strands connecting them to the dragon's skin. And their pulsing was very rhythmic, like a heartbeat, but not quite matching the dragon's actual heartbeat. Think they might be some kind of medical device? He asked. Maybe, or maybe there's something else entirely. You might want to do some research on this species. After Sujin left, Jeho spent hours searching the galactic databases for information about Valdorian ice dragons. What he found wasn't encouraging. Most sources said the species was extinct, wiped out during something called the Great Silence War 10,000 years ago. The few remaining records described them as small, intelligent creatures with limited telepathic abilities. But one old research paper caught his attention. It mentioned that Valdorian dragons had been highly prized by ancient civilizations, not as pets but as partners. The paper suggested that the dragons were much more intelligent than most people realized, and that they had abilities beyond simple telepathy. The paper also mentioned something called suppression devices, but the details were corrupted in the database. That afternoon, while Jeho was reading more research, he heard a soft sound from the cage. He looked over to see Hyan moving for the first time since he'd bought it. The dragon was trying to lift its head and one wing was twitching slightly. Feeling better? Jeho asked, moving closer to the cage. Hyan turned its head toward him and opened both eyes. They were a beautiful pale blue color, almost like ice. For a moment, Jeho felt something strange, like a gentle pressure in his mind. It lasted only a second, but it left him feeling oddly calm and happy. "Did you just do something to my head?" he asked. The dragon blinked once and closed its eyes again. But Jeho was sure something had happened. The feeling reminded him of the way his grandmother used to calm him down when he was upset as a child. Warm and safe and peaceful. Over the next few days, Hyan continued to improve slowly. The dragon began eating small amounts of the nutrition paste Jeho offered, and it started responding when he talked to it. Not with words, but with small movements and that strange calm feeling that appeared in Jeho's mind. On the fourth day, something interesting happened. Jeho was working on cargo manifests when he heard a small metallic ping from the cage. He looked over to see that one of the smallest barnacles had fallen off completely. Underneath, Hyan's scales were bright white and seemed to shimmer with their own light. "Well, look at that," he said, picking up the fallen barnacle. It was heavier than he expected, and when he looked closely, he could see tiny circuits inside the organic-looking shell. Sujin was right. "You're definitely some kind of machine." Word about Jeho's unusual purchase had spread around Epsilon Station during the ship's extended stay for repairs. Other traders started approaching him in the corridors and markets, offering to buy Hyan from him. Most of the offers were legitimate, though much higher than the 50 credits he had paid. But some of the interested parties made him nervous. They asked too many questions about the dragon's condition and seemed disappointed when he said it was still sick. On the 6th day, a woman named Nari approached him in a station cafe. She was human, but something about her made Jeho's instincts tingle with warning. She moved too smoothly and her eyes seemed to see everything at once. "I hear you bought yourself an interesting pet," she said, sitting down across from him without being invited. "Just a sick lizard," Jeho said carefully. "Nothing special." Nari smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. Jeho Kim, cargo hauler, 3 years experience in the Outer Rim trade routes. Lives on his ship with a crew of 2. Recently purchased what the seller claimed was a Valdorian ice dragon. "You've done your homework. It's my job to know things. I'm an information broker, and the information I have about your purchase might interest you. I'm listening. Valdorian ice dragons aren't extinct. They're just very well hidden. And they're not the harmless pets most people think they are. Your little friend there might be worth more than your entire ship." Jeho tried to keep his expression neutral. If that were true, why would someone sell it for 50 credits? Because the seller probably didn't know what he had. Or because someone wanted to get rid of it quietly. These creatures have a complicated history, Jeho. Not everyone wants them to be found. "What kind of complicated history?" Nari leaned forward. "The kind that gets people killed if they ask too many questions. But here's some free advice since I like you. Be very careful who you trust with information about your pet. And if that dragon starts showing unusual abilities, you might want to consider moving on from this station quickly." She stood up to leave, then paused. "Oh, and Jeho? Those barnacles aren't natural parasites. They're suppression devices. Very old, very advanced suppression devices. Someone went to a lot of trouble to keep your dragon weak and helpless. Why are you telling me this? Because I have a feeling you're going to need all the help you can get." After Nari left, Jeho sat in the cafe for another hour, thinking about her warnings. When he finally returned to the ship, he found Sujin in his quarters, staring at Hyan's cage with a shocked expression. "Captain, she said without looking away from the dragon. "You need to see this." Jeho looked at the cage and gasped. 2 more barnacles had fallen off while he was gone, and Hyan was sitting up for the first time since he'd bought it. The dragon's scales where the barnacles had been were glowing softly, and its eyes were bright and alert. But that wasn't the most shocking part. The most shocking part was that Hyan had grown. It was now clearly larger than it had been that morning, maybe the size of a small dog instead of a house cat. "How long was I gone?" Jeho asked. 2 hours, Sujin said. "Captain, what exactly did you buy?" Before Jeho could answer, he felt that pressure in his mind again. But this time it was stronger, and it came with something that felt almost like words. Not actual words, but meanings that appeared in his thoughts. "Thank you." The words were faint and uncertain, like someone speaking a foreign language they barely knew. But they were definitely there, and they were definitely coming from Hyan. Jeho looked at the dragon, who was watching him with those intelligent pale blue eyes. "You're welcome," he said softly. The dragon blinked once, and Jeho felt a wave of gratitude and affection that was so strong it brought tears to his eyes. Sujin was staring at both of them. "Captain, please tell me that dragon didn't just talk to you telepathically." "I think it did, and it's definitely bigger than it was this morning." "Yeah." Sujin rubbed her forehead. "I think we might be in trouble." Looking at Hyan, who was now strong enough to stand and walk around its small cage, Jeho had a feeling she was right. But as he watched the dragon stretch its wings for the first time, he also felt something he hadn't expected. He felt proud. 3 days after Hyan's first telepathic contact, Jeho woke up to find the dragon had grown again overnight. It was now too big for the original cage, so he had moved it to a larger enclosure in the cargo bay. 5 more barnacles had fallen off, and the dragon's white scales were glowing brighter than ever. Hyan was also becoming more active. It could fly short distances around the cargo bay, and its telepathic abilities were getting stronger. Instead of just simple feelings, Jeho was now receiving actual thoughts and images. The dragon showed him pictures of a beautiful ice world with crystal cities and other dragons flying through aurora-filled skies. But these happy memories were mixed with darker images of war, fire, and dragons falling from the sky. "Your homeworld?" Jeho asked during one of these mental conversations. Hyan sent him a feeling of sadness mixed with the concept of long ago and gone. Sujin had been studying the fallen barnacles in her workshop. What she found made everyone on the ship nervous. "These things are incredibly advanced," she told Jeho and Boram during a crew meeting. "The technology inside them is at least 1,000 years ahead of anything we have today. Maybe more." "What do they do exactly?" Boram asked. "Near as I can tell, they suppress biological functions. Not just physical abilities, but mental ones too. They're designed to keep something powerful locked down and helpless." Jeho looked through the transparent wall of the cargo bay at Hyan, who was practicing flying in small circles. "So someone put these on him to keep him weak. That's what it looks like. But here's the scary part, Captain. I ran a deep scan on Hyan yesterday, and his biosignature is off the charts. Whatever he really is, he's incredibly powerful. These barnacles have been suppressing abilities that could probably level a city block." The crew sat in silence for a moment, thinking about that. "So what do we do?" Boram asked. "Stop removing the barnacles?" "I don't think we could stop it now even if we wanted to," Sujin said. "They seem to be falling off on their own as he gets stronger. It's like his body is rejecting them." That afternoon, while the Wanderer was traveling between star systems, they received a priority communication from an official-looking ship. The message was directed specifically at Jeho, which was unusual since cargo haulers rarely got official attention. The man on the screen wore the dark blue uniform of the Galactic Preservation Council. He was middle-aged with the kind of serious expression that suggested he didn't smile very often. "Captain Kim, my name is Kyung-Soo Park, senior investigator with the Galactic Preservation Council. We need to speak with you about a recent purchase you made on Epsilon Station." Jeho felt his stomach drop. "What kind of purchase?" "Don't play games with me, Captain. We know you bought what was claimed to be a Valdorian ice dragon. We need you to turn that creature over to us immediately. And if I refuse, then you'll be arrested for possession of a restricted biological entity. Valdorian ice dragons are classified as extremely dangerous. No private citizen is allowed to own one." The trader who sold it to me didn't mention anything about restrictions. Kyung-soo's expression didn't change. The trader probably didn't know what he was selling. Most people wouldn't recognize a real Valdorian dragon. They've been extinct for 10,000 years. If they're extinct, then what I have can't be a real one. Captain Kim, we've been monitoring unusual energy signatures in your ship's vicinity. The readings match historical records of Valdorian dragon biosignatures. You need to understand these creatures aren't harmless pets. They're the most powerful telepathic species the galaxy has ever known. Jae-ho thought about Hyan's gentle mental touch and found it hard to believe the dragon was dangerous. What makes them so dangerous? In their prime, Valdorian dragons could communicate across interstellar distances. They could manipulate matter at the molecular level. Some historical accounts suggest they could even affect the fabric of space and time itself. During the Great Silence War, it took a coalition of 50 species to contain them. Contain them? I thought you said they were extinct. Kyung-soo paused and Jae-ho saw something like regret cross his face. The official records say they were destroyed. But the truth is more complicated. The dragons were too valuable to simply kill. They were captured and suppressed instead. Suppressed how? Biomechanical devices were attached to them to limit their abilities. They were then scattered across the galaxy as exotic pets, sold to collectors who had no idea what they really were. It was considered a merciful solution at the time. Jae-ho felt sick. You turned an entire intelligent species into pets. It was either that or genocide, Captain. The dragons had become too powerful. They were disrupting interstellar communications, accidentally destroying space stations with their abilities, creating diplomatic incidents. The galaxy wasn't ready for their level of power, and now you've apparently started removing the suppression devices from one of them. Do you have any idea what you've done? Before Jae-ho could answer, he felt Hyan's presence in his mind. The dragon had been listening to the conversation somehow, and it was sending him images. Not memories this time, but something else. Understanding. Jae-ho saw the truth of what had happened 10,000 years ago. The dragons hadn't been aggressive or destructive on purpose. They had been trying to help, to share their abilities with other species and create a better galaxy. But their power had been too much, too fast. Fear and misunderstanding had led to war. The dragons had allowed themselves to be captured rather than fight back, because fighting would have destroyed the very species they were trying to protect. They let you capture them, Jae-ho said quietly. They could have fought back, but they chose not to. Kyung-soo's eyes widened. It's already in your head, isn't it? Captain, you need to understand. Once a Valdorian dragon reaches full power, it forms a permanent telepathic bond with anyone it trusts. You're already connected to it. If we don't act soon, you'll be lost too. Lost how? The bond changes humans, Captain. Your brain will adapt to handle the dragon's telepathic abilities. But the process isn't always safe. Some humans have been driven insane by the connection. Others have lost their individual identity completely, becoming just extensions of the dragon's will. Jae-ho felt Hyan's indignation at this accusation. The dragon sent him feelings of protection and friendship, along with images of humans and dragons working together as equals. I don't think it works that way, Jae-ho said. Hyan doesn't want to control anyone. It just wants to be free. Hyan, you've named it? He's not an it. He's intelligent, maybe more intelligent than any of us, and he's been a prisoner for who knows how long. Kyung-soo leaned forward on the screen. Captain, listen to me very carefully. We've been tracking 17 different Valdorian dragons across the galaxy. Most of them have been safely contained for centuries. But in the last week, 3 of them have broken free from their suppression devices. We think your dragon's awakening is somehow triggering the others. Jae-ho felt his blood run cold. What do you mean? Valdorian dragons are telepathically linked to each other across vast distances. When one of them reaches a certain level of power, it can awaken the others. You haven't just freed one dragon, Captain. You may have started a chain reaction that will free them all. And that's a bad thing? 17 full-powered Valdorian dragons all awakening at the same time after 10,000 years of imprisonment? They'll be angry, Captain. They'll want revenge, and they have the power to take it. The communication ended abruptly as Kyung-soo's ship moved out of range. Jae-ho sat in his captain's chair, thinking about what he'd learned. In the cargo bay, Hyan was standing at the transparent wall looking at him with those intelligent blue eyes. Jae-ho felt the dragon's presence in his mind, gentle and reassuring. Hyan sent him images of peace, of cooperation between species, of a galaxy where dragons and other races worked together instead of fearing each other. But underneath those hopeful images, Jeho sensed something else: anger, not at him, but at the people who had turned dragons into prisoners and pets, at the fear and ignorance that had led to 10,000 years of slavery. Maybe Kyung-soo was right to be worried. Maybe the awakening dragons would want revenge. But as Jeho looked at Hyan, he made a decision. Whatever happened next, he wasn't going to abandon his friend. The dragon had been a prisoner long enough. "We're not giving you up," he said out loud. Hyan sent him a wave of gratitude so strong it brought tears to his eyes. But Jeho also felt something else from the dragon, a warning. Other ships were coming, and they wouldn't be as polite as Kyung-soo had been. The real chase was about to begin. Jeho didn't have to wait long to find out what Hyan's warning meant. 2 days after the conversation with Kyung-soo, 3 military ships appeared on their sensors. The ships were flying in attack formation and broadcasting demands for the Wanderer to stop and prepare for boarding. "Captain, we've got company," Boram called from the navigation station. 3 council enforcement vessels coming in fast." "How fast?" Jeho asked, already knowing he didn't want to hear the answer. "Fast enough to catch us before we reach the next system." Jeho looked toward the cargo bay where Hyan was resting. The dragon had grown again overnight and was now the size of a large dog. More barnacles had fallen off, and his telepathic abilities were getting stronger every day. Yesterday, Hyan had managed to communicate directly with the ship's computer systems, which had surprised everyone. "Sujin, how much power can you give me?" "Not enough to outrun military ships, Captain. We're a cargo hauler, not a racing ship." Before Jeho could respond, he felt Hyan's presence in his mind. The dragon was sending him images of the approaching ships and suggestions for evasive maneuvers. But more than that, Hyan was offering to help. "I have an idea," Jeho said, "but it's crazy and dangerous." "All your ideas are crazy and dangerous," Boram said. "What makes this one special?" "This time I want to let Hyan help us." Sujin stared at him. "Captain, we don't know what he can really do. What if he accidentally damages the ship? What if the council ships catch us and take him away?" Before anyone could argue further, the lead council ship fired a warning shot across their bow. The blast shook the Wanderer and made all the lights flicker. "Cargo vessel Wanderer, this is your final warning," came a voice over the communication system. "Stop your engines and prepare for boarding. You are carrying restricted biological material." Jeho looked at his crew. "Your choice. We can surrender and let them take Hyan, or we can try something that might get us all killed." "What exactly are you planning?" Sujin asked. "Hyan says he can help us jump to hyperspace without using the normal navigation systems. He can calculate the jump coordinates directly and help the engines handle the stress." Boram's eyes went wide. "Captain, that's impossible. Hyperspace jumps require precise calculations and safety systems. If we get it wrong, we could end up inside a star or scattered across 3 dimensions. Hyan says he knows what he's doing." "He's been locked up for thousands of years," Sujin pointed out. "How does he know anything about modern hyperspace technology?" Jeho felt Hyan's amusement at that question. The dragon sent him images of space, but not as humans saw it. To Hyan, hyperspace wasn't a separate dimension that required technology to access. It was just another part of normal space, like looking at the ocean from underwater instead of from the surface. "He sees space differently than we do," Jeho explained. "To him, hyperspace is natural." The council ships were getting closer. Jeho could see weapon ports opening on their hulls. "Decision time," he said. Sujin and Boram looked at each other, then nodded. "Do it," Sujin said. "But if we end up scattered across the galaxy, I'm haunting you." Jeho felt Hyan's presence expand through the ship's systems. It was like watching a gentle wave of intelligence flow through every circuit and wire. The dragon was learning how the Wanderer worked, understanding its systems in ways that would take human engineers years to master. Then Hyan began to sing. It wasn't a sound that anyone could hear with their ears. It was a vibration that seemed to come from everywhere at once, a harmony that resonated through the ship's hull and into the bones of everyone aboard. The vibration was beautiful and terrifying at the same time. Space around the Wanderer began to shimmer. The stars outside twisted and bent as reality itself seemed to fold. Jeho felt the ship moving in directions that didn't have names, sliding through dimensions that human minds weren't designed to understand. The council ships fired at where the Wanderer had been, but their weapons passed through empty space. The cargo ship was already gone, traveling through a part of reality that their sensors couldn't detect. The jump lasted only a few seconds, but when it ended, they were 3 star systems away from where they had started. The council ships were nowhere to be seen. That, Boram said in a shaky voice, was the smoothest hyperspace jump I've ever experienced. It didn't feel like hyperspace at all, Sujin added. It felt like we just stepped sideways through reality. Hyan sent Jae-ho a feeling of satisfaction mixed with exhaustion. The jump had taken a lot out of the dragon, but he had enjoyed using his abilities to help his friends. But their escape had consequences. Over the next few days, as they traveled toward the Outer Rim territories, Jae-ho began receiving strange reports over the galactic news networks. Dragons were awakening all across the galaxy. On the mining world of Kepler-7, a pet lizard owned by a wealthy collector had grown to the size of a house and was communicating telepathically with the local population. On the trade station Gamma Prime, a creature that had been used as a living decoration in a restaurant had broken free and was helping to repair damaged systems with abilities no one understood. Some of the awakening dragons were angry. A facility that had been keeping 3 dragons for medical experiments was now a crater. The dragons had escaped, but not before making sure their captors couldn't hurt anyone else. "It's really happening," Jae-ho said as he read the reports. "They're all waking up because of Hyan." The dragon was standing next to him in the cargo bay, now large enough that Jae-ho had to look up to meet his eyes. More barnacles fell off every day, and Hyan's abilities continued to grow. He could now communicate clearly with thoughts and emotions, and his control over space and time was becoming more refined. "Are you sorry?" Jae-ho asked. "Sorry that I started this?" Hyan considered the question seriously. He sent Jae-ho images of his people, scattered and imprisoned for thousands of years. Dragons who had forgotten who they were, who had been treated as animals for so long that some of them believed it was true. Then he showed Jae-ho images of what could be. Dragons working with other species, sharing their abilities to heal damaged worlds and improve life across the galaxy. A future where fear was replaced by cooperation. "No," Hyan finally replied, the word forming clearly in Jae-ho's mind. "Not sorry, grateful." But their peaceful moment was interrupted by an alarm from the bridge. Boram's voice came over the intercom, tense with worry. "Captain, you need to see this. We've got a ship approaching, and it's not like anything in our databases." Jae-ho and Hyan made their way to the bridge, where Boram was staring at the sensor readings with a confused expression. "It's big," she said. "Bigger than a battleship, but it's not broadcasting any identification signals. And Captain, it's beautiful." On the main screen they could see the approaching vessel. Boram was right about it being beautiful. The ship looked like it had been grown rather than built, with flowing organic curves and surfaces that seemed to shimmer with their own light. It was clearly alien technology, but unlike anything in the current galactic databases. "I think it's a dragon ship," Sujin said quietly. As if in response to her words, the alien vessel sent them a communication, but it wasn't transmitted over normal channels. Instead, it arrived as a telepathic message that all 3 humans could somehow understand. "Greetings, friend of dragons. We have felt the awakening song across the stars. We come to offer aid and guidance." Jae-ho looked at Hyan, who was radiating excitement and joy. "Your people?" he asked. "Some of us were never captured," Hyan explained. "Some hid in the deep space between galaxies, waiting for the day when our brothers and sisters would be free again." The dragon ship moved closer, and Jae-ho could see that it was even more massive than the sensors had indicated. It was easily the size of a small moon, and its hull was covered with symbols that seemed to shift and change as he watched. "They want to meet with us," Hyan said. "They want to meet the human who started the awakening." Jae-ho felt a mix of excitement and terror. He had bought a sick pet as a joke, and now he was about to meet representatives of an ancient civilization that could manipulate reality itself. "Are they friendly?" he asked. Hyan sent him feelings of warmth and gratitude. "They are grateful as I am grateful. You freed not just me, but all of us." As the Wanderer docked with the dragon ship, Jae-ho realized that his life had just changed in ways he couldn't even imagine. He was no longer just a cargo hauler. He was now humanity's first contact with a species that could reshape the galaxy. He just hoped he was ready for what came next. The inside of the dragon ship was unlike anything Jae-ho had ever seen. The corridor seemed to be made of living crystal that glowed with soft light, and the walls hummed with harmonics that made his bones vibrate pleasantly. Gravity worked differently here too, allowing them to walk on surfaces that should have been walls or ceilings. Hyan moved through the ship with obvious joy, his scales glowing brighter as he reconnected with his own kind. 3 other dragons waited for them in what seemed to be a meeting chamber. These dragons were much larger than Hyan, their scales showing the deep blues and purples of age and wisdom. The eldest dragon introduced herself as Yun Young. She spoke directly into their minds with a voice that felt like starlight. "Welcome, humans. We have watched your species with interest for many years. You are young but promising." "Thank you," Jeho said. "Not sure of the proper protocol for talking to ancient space dragons. Hyan tells me that some of your people were never captured. A few hundred of us escaped to the void between galaxies when the suppression began. We have been waiting ever since for the right moment to return. Your actions have given us that moment." Another dragon, who introduced himself as Minho, stepped forward. His mental voice carried urgency. "The awakening has begun across 17 star systems. Our people are remembering who they are, but not all of them are handling the freedom well. Some are angry, some are confused. Some seek revenge against those who imprisoned them." Yun Young showed them images through the shared mental link. Dragons across the galaxy were breaking free from their suppression devices, but the results were chaotic. Some dragons were peacefully seeking their own kind. Others were lashing out at anyone who tried to control them. A few had gone completely wild, their minds damaged by millennia of imprisonment. "We need to reach them," Yun Young explained. "Help them remember the old ways, the peaceful ways. But we cannot do it alone. The galaxy has changed much in our absence." "What do you want from us?" Sujin asked. "Your species has something unique," Minho replied. "Humans adapt quickly to new situations. You form bonds with other species easily. Most importantly, you were the ones who showed kindness to our lost brother when no one else would." Jeho felt Hyan's agreement with this assessment. The dragon sent him memories of the long years in the cage, watching other species pass by without caring about his suffering. Only humans had stopped to help. "We want to establish humans as mediators," and Young continued. "Representatives who can help bridge the gap between our people and the rest of the galaxy. The old fear and mistrust must not be allowed to grow again." "What about the Galactic Preservation Council?" Boram asked. "They seemed pretty determined to keep your people suppressed." The ancient dragons shared a look that somehow conveyed volumes of communication. "The council represents the old way of thinking," Minho said. "They believe that power must be controlled through force and fear. But we have learned much during our exile. Power shared willingly is stronger than power taken by force." Over the next several hours, the dragons showed Jeho and his crew the true scope of what was happening. Using their vast ship's communication systems, they could monitor the awakening dragons across the galaxy in real time. The results were mixed. Some dragons were reuniting peacefully with their scattered families. Others were working with local populations to repair environmental damage or solve technical problems. But there were also reports of conflicts, misunderstandings, and growing military responses from various planetary governments. "The situation is getting worse," Yun Young admitted. 3 solar systems have declared martial law. The Preservation Council is mobilizing their full fleet. If this continues, we may face another war. "What can we do to stop it?" Jeho asked. "You can help us reach the confused and angry dragons," Minho explained. "Your bond with Hyan gives you a unique ability to communicate with our people. But more importantly, you can serve as proof that humans and dragons can work together as equals." The plan they developed was ambitious and dangerous. Jeho and his crew would travel to systems where dragons were awakening, serving as mediators between the dragons and local authorities. Meanwhile, the free dragons would use their ships to evacuate any dragons who wanted to leave and start new lives in uninhabited systems. "It won't be easy," Yun Young warned them. "Many species fear us, and some dragons will not trust humans after so many years of captivity. You may find yourselves caught between 2 sides that want to fight." "We'll do it," Jeho said, looking at his crew for confirmation. Sujin and Boram nodded their agreement. "But we're going to need help," Sujin added. "Our ship isn't designed for diplomatic missions. And if we're going into war zones, we'll need better protection." The dragons had already thought of that. They upgraded the Wanderer with technology that was thousands of years ahead of anything humans had developed. New shields that could deflect almost any weapon. Engines that could jump through space as easily as Hyon had demonstrated. And communication systems that could reach across the galaxy instantly. Most importantly, they installed a device that would let Jeho communicate with any dragon, regardless of distance or mental barriers. This will let you speak to dragons who have forgotten how to use telepathy, Minho explained. But be careful. Some of them may have been damaged by their long imprisonment. Their minds may not be stable. As the Wanderer left the dragon ship and headed toward their first assignment, Jeho felt the weight of responsibility settling on his shoulders. He had gone from a simple cargo hauler to humanity's first dragon ambassador in less than 2 weeks. Their first stop was the Altair system, where reports indicated that a dragon had awakened in a military research facility and was holding the entire base hostage. The local government was threatening to use nuclear weapons if the dragon didn't surrender. No pressure, Boram muttered as they dropped out of hyperspace near Altair Prime. The scene that greeted them was tense. 3 military fleets surrounded the research station, their weapons trained on a facility that was glowing with an eerie blue light. The dragon inside was clearly awake and very angry. Jeho felt the dragon's rage even from this distance. Centuries of painful experiments and cruel treatment had driven it nearly insane with fury. It wasn't just holding the facility hostage. It was preparing to destroy everything within a 100-kilometer radius. "This is Admiral So Young of the Altair Defense Force," came a transmission to the Wanderer. "You are entering a restricted military zone. State your business or be fired upon." "This is Captain Jeho Kim representing the Free Dragon Alliance," Jeho replied, using the name the ancient dragons had suggested. "I'm here to negotiate with the dragon in your facility." "There will be no negotiation with that thing," So Young replied coldly. "It has killed 17 researchers and is threatening to destroy the entire station. We are prepared to use nuclear weapons to stop it." "Give me 1 hour," Jeho said. "Let me try to talk to it." "You have 30 minutes, So Young said after a long pause. "After that, we open fire." Jeho used the dragon communication device to reach out to the angry dragon in the facility. What he found was a mind so filled with pain and rage that it was barely rational. The dragon's name was Jinwu, and he had been captured as a young dragon over 800 years ago. Since then, he had been subjected to endless experiments, surgical procedures, and psychological torture. The humans in the facility had been trying to understand how dragon telepathy worked by dissecting his brain while he was still alive. "They hurt me." Jinwu's thoughts were like screams of anguish. "They hurt me for so long. Now I hurt them back." "I understand," Jeho replied, trying to project calm and sympathy. "What they did to you was wrong, but killing more people won't make the pain stop. Nothing will make the pain stop. I am broken, damaged. Better to end it all." Jeho felt Jinwu gathering power for a massive energy release that would indeed destroy everything nearby. In desperation, he did something the ancient dragons had warned him never to do. He opened his mind completely to the damaged dragon, sharing not just thoughts but his own memories and emotions. Jinwu experienced Jeho's kindness to Hyon, his crew's acceptance of the dragon as a friend, and the joy of the reunion with the free dragons. For a moment, the angry dragon's pain was overwhelmed by the possibility of hope. "You really think dragons and humans can be friends?" Jinwu asked, his mental voice now filled with wonder instead of rage. "I know they can," Jeho replied, "but it starts with forgiveness, and that's the hardest part of all." The blue glow around the research station began to fade as Jinwu released his hold on the destructive energy. Minutes later, the dragon emerged from the facility, his scales dull and scarred from centuries of abuse, but his eyes clear and rational. Admiral So Young's fleet moved to intercept him, but Jeho quickly arranged for one of the hidden dragon ships to arrive and take Jinwu to safety. As they watched the ancient vessel disappear into hyperspace, carrying the freed dragon to a place where he could heal, Jeho realized how much work lay ahead. There were 15 more dragons awakening across the galaxy, each with their own pain and anger to overcome, and not all of them would be as willing to listen as Jinwu had been. But as Hyon nuzzled against his shoulder, sending feelings of pride and gratitude, Jeho knew they would find a way. Humans and dragons working together could accomplish things that neither species could achieve alone. The galaxy was about to learn that the hard way. 6 months after Jinwu's rescue, Jeho stood on the observation deck of New Valdoria, the first dragon colony established in over 10,000 years. Through the transparent walls, he could see dragons of all sizes flying between crystal spires that seemed to grow from the planet's surface like living art. The rescue missions had been successful beyond anyone's expectations. Of the 17 awakening dragons, 14 had been safely evacuated to new homes. 2 had chosen to remain with human families who had treated them well during their captivity. Only 1 had been lost, destroyed by military forces before Jeho could reach him. But the real victory wasn't in the numbers. It was in what had happened afterward. The galaxy had watched in amazement as the rescued dragons began demonstrating their true abilities. Instead of seeking revenge or trying to conquer other species, they focused on healing and cooperation. Dragons worked with human engineers to develop new technologies. They helped terraform damaged worlds and clean polluted atmospheres. Most importantly, they served as mediators in conflicts between other species, their telepathic abilities allowing them to facilitate understanding where words had failed. The council meeting starts in an hour, Sujin said, joining Jeho on the observation deck. Are you ready? Jeho nodded, though he still felt nervous about addressing the Galactic Council. In the months since the awakening began, humanity's status in galactic politics had changed dramatically. What had started as a minor spacefaring species was now considered one of the most important diplomatic powers in the galaxy. The irony wasn't lost on him. Humans had achieved this position not through military conquest or technological superiority, but by showing kindness to a creature everyone else had dismissed as worthless. How's the vote looking? He asked. Close, Boram said, appearing beside them with a data pad full of polling information. The older species are still afraid of the dragons. They remember the stories from the Great Silence War, but the younger civilizations see the benefits of cooperation. The vote they were discussing would determine the future of both dragons and humans in the galaxy. The Galactic Council was deciding whether to officially recognize the Free Dragon Alliance as a legitimate government and grant them territorial rights to establish new colonies. More importantly for humanity, the Council was also voting on whether to grant humans special diplomatic status as mediators between dragons and other species. It would make Earth and her colonies major players in galactic politics. Hyan landed on the observation deck with the graceful silence that Jeho had come to associate with happy dragons. The dragon had grown significantly over the past months and was now the size of a small spacecraft. His scales shimmered with health and contentment. The elders are ready, Hyan said, his telepathic voice warm with affection. They want to speak with you before the council session. The dragon elders had arrived from the deep space colonies the week before, ancient dragons who had lived through the original war and carried the memories of their people's golden age. They were magnificent beings, each one larger than a building, their scales showing the deep colors that came with thousands of years of age. Yunyang, now serving as the primary representative of the Free Dragon Alliance, greeted Jeho in the crystal chamber that served as their meeting place. Friend Jeho, she said, her mental voice carrying harmonics of respect and gratitude. We wanted to thank you one final time before the council makes its decision. You don't need to thank me, Jeho replied. I just did what anyone should have done. But that is exactly why we must thank you, another elder, Donghyun, interjected. For 10,000 years, millions of beings passed by our imprisoned people. They saw creatures in pain and chose to look away. Only humans stopped to help. Minho, who had become something like Jeho's personal friend among the elders, shared a complex image through their mental link. It showed the galaxy as the dragons saw it, a vast web of interconnected life and energy. For thousands of years, that web had been damaged, with the dragon network suppressed and broken. Now the web was healing. Dragons were taking their place as guardians and guides, helping to maintain the delicate balance between species and worlds. But the web had a new component that hadn't existed in the ancient days. Humanity's unique position as bridges between the dragons and other species. Your people have something we lost long ago, Yunyang explained. The ability to see potential instead of just current reality. When you looked at Hyan, you didn't see a dying pet. You saw someone who needed help. The Galactic Council session was held on Centauri Station, a massive diplomatic complex that orbited between 3 star systems. Representatives from over 200 species gathered in the Great Assembly Hall. Their various forms of communication translated through advanced systems. Jeho had been invited to speak on behalf of both humanity and the dragons. As he walked to the speaker's platform, he could feel the weight of thousands of eyes, sensors, and other perception organs focused on him. 6 months ago I was a cargo hauler, he began, his voice carried to every corner of the vast hall by the station's communication systems. I bought what I thought was a dying pet as a joke. I had no idea that simple act of kindness would change the galaxy. He told them about Hyon's recovery, about the awakening of the Dragon Network, and about the months of rescue missions and diplomatic negotiations that had followed. He spoke about the damaged dragons they had saved and the ones they had lost. The dragons aren't asking for their old empire back, he continued. They're not seeking revenge for 10,000 years of imprisonment. They're offering partnership. They want to share their abilities to heal worlds, facilitate communication, and help maintain the balance that keeps all of us alive. Admiral So Young, who had become an unexpected ally after witnessing Jinwoo's rescue, stood to address the assembly. The Altair system has worked with dragons for the past 6 months, she said. They helped us clean up pollution that had been poisoning our worlds for centuries. They mediated a trade dispute that had been going on for 50 years. Most importantly, they did it all without asking for anything in return except recognition and respect. Other representatives shared similar stories. Dragons had helped negotiate peace treaties, repair environmental damage, and solve technical problems that had puzzled scientists for generations. The evidence was overwhelming. The partnership between humans and dragons was benefiting everyone. But not all of the council members were convinced. Kyung-soo, representing the Preservation Council, stood to voice the opposition. We've heard many positive stories today, he said, his voice carrying across the hall. But we must not forget the lessons of history. The dragons were suppressed because their power became too great to control. What guarantee do we have that they won't become a threat again? Because they chose not to be a threat when they could have been, Jeho replied. Every dragon we rescued had the power to destroy the facilities where they were held. Some of them had been tortured for centuries, but when given the choice between revenge and healing, they chose healing. What about the future? Another representative asked. Dragons live for thousands of years. Humans live for less than a century. What happens when the current generation of dragons who remember imprisonment dies out? Will their descendants still feel grateful to humanity? Hyan stepped forward from where he had been waiting at the edge of the platform. The dragon's presence filled the hall with calm energy as he addressed the assembly directly. We do not offer partnership because of gratitude, he said, his telepathic voice reaching every mind in the hall. We offer it because it is right. The galaxy is stronger when all its children work together. He shared images through the mental link, showing the council representatives what the dragons had learned during their exile. They had studied the galaxy from afar, watching as species rose and fell, as wars destroyed entire civilizations, as fear and mistrust created barriers between worlds. Alone, each species is limited by its own perspective, Hyan continued. Together we can see the whole picture. Humans teach us to hope when hope seems lost. We can teach others to see beyond the boundaries of their own worlds. The vote, when it came, was closer than anyone had expected, but it passed. The Free Dragon Alliance was officially recognized as a sovereign government, with rights to establish colonies in uninhabited systems. Humanity was granted special diplomatic status as mediators and ambassadors. More importantly, a new treaty was signed establishing the Cooperative Council, a body that would work alongside the existing Galactic Council to promote partnership between species instead of just managing conflicts. As Jeho stood on the platform, watching representatives from hundreds of worlds sign the historic agreement, he felt Hyan's presence in his mind. The dragon was sharing the joy and relief of dragons across the galaxy as they felt the weight of centuries of fear and mistrust finally beginning to lift. Thank you, Hyan said privately, his mental voice filled with emotion that was too complex for words. Thank you for trusting me, Jeho replied. 1 year later, Jeho stood in his new office on Earth looking out at the skyline of Geneva where the Human Dragon Diplomatic Corps had established its headquarters. Ships from a dozen worlds were visible in the sky, carrying ambassadors, traders, and scholars who wanted to learn from the partnership that had changed galactic politics. Sujin knocked on his door, carrying reports from the field teams that were now working throughout the galaxy. The Andromeda mission found 3 more suppressed dragons, she said, settling into a chair across from his desk. All of them in good condition, ready for evacuation. Any problems with the local authorities? None. Word has spread enough that most governments now cooperate with rescue missions. They've seen what happens when dragons are treated well versus what happens when they're abused. Boram appeared in the doorway, grinning with excitement. "Captain, you're going to want to see this," she said, activating a holographic display. Long-range sensors have detected something amazing. The display showed a star map with hundreds of points of light scattered across multiple galaxies. "What am I looking at?" Jeho asked. "Dragon colonies," Boram said, "not just the ones we know about. The free dragons have been busy. They've established settlements in over 300 systems, most of them in previously uninhabitable worlds that they've terraformed. And they're all connected," Sujin added. "The telepathic network spans multiple galaxies now. Information, ideas, and resources flow freely between all of them." Jeho stared at the map, amazed by how much had changed since that day on Epsilon Station when he had impulsively bought a dying creature covered in barnacles. Hyan landed on the office balcony, his massive form blocking out the afternoon sun. The dragon had been exploring the outer rim systems for the past month, but he always returned to Earth eventually. "Miss me?" Jeho asked. "Always," Hyan replied, settling down so they could speak comfortably. "But I bring good news. The outer rim colonies have agreed to join the Cooperative Council. That makes 57 species now working together instead of just coexisting. Any problems?" A few species are still hesitant. They remember the old stories about dragons being dangerous. But time heals old fears. Another generation or two, and the galaxy will wonder how it ever functioned without cooperation. That evening, as Jeho walked through the gardens surrounding the diplomatic complex, he reflected on how much his life had changed. He was no longer a simple cargo hauler. He was humanity's first dragon ambassador, a position that had made him one of the most influential people in the galaxy. But the title he was most proud of was the one Hyan had given him privately, friend. The garden was filled with plants from dozens of worlds, a living symbol of the cooperation that had become possible when species chose trust over fear. Dragons flew overhead, their scales reflecting the light of 3 different moons as they went about their evening routines. "Do you ever regret it?" Sujin asked, joining him on a bench beside a fountain that sang with harmonics designed by dragon acoustics engineers. "Regret what?" "Buying that dying dragon. Starting all this. You could have just minded your own business and stayed a cargo hauler." Jeho thought about that for a moment, watching a group of young dragons playing in the air above them. Their joy was infectious, filling the evening with telepathic laughter that made everyone in the garden smile. "No," he said finally. "I don't regret it. Sometimes the best things happen when you choose to care about someone else's pain, even when it changes everything, especially when it changes everything." High above them, dragons and human aircraft shared the sky in perfect harmony, their lights mixing with the stars to create patterns that seemed to dance with the rhythm of life itself. Jeho had bought an albino dragon covered in painful barnacles as a joke. He had no idea what would follow. But looking around at the world that kindness had built, he knew he would make the same choice again in a heartbeat.